Welcome back from the break. I'm Khalil Charles. Now, we turn our attentions to the African diaspora and look at the situation for children on the beautiful island of Haiti. The island has done much to improve child protection and labour laws, but as Khadija Ahmed reports, extreme poverty and hardship is hampering efforts to improve the situation for children there.
Seated on a dusty floor on the outskirts of the capital city, 7-year-old Samuel Jean fashions a little boat from a piece of wrought iron. This is not child's play, but work, as the little boy helps his parents craft trinkets to sell to tourists for a meagre sum. Officially, Haiti's labour laws forbid minors younger than 14 from working, but extreme poverty leaves no other option for many families on this divided Caribbean island. In the village of Nouil, a half-century-old tradition exists of employing children to create ornaments from iron. Tourism has yet to take off in Haiti. For now, there are more souvenirs in circulation than visitors. So much of what is produced by artisans end up being purchased for sale to customers elsewhere in the Caribbean. In Haiti, 80% of schools are private. This means the cost of tuition, uniform and other education-related expenses can be a burden for parents. For children like Samuel Jean, daily labour in the workshop is a matter of survival. When work is plentiful in Nouil, Samuel can earn as much as £7 a day, a vital supplement to the living of his father, who is a simple maize farmer. It is a grinding existence. Samuel's family of 5 squeeze into a makeshift shelter just a few square meters in size, sealed with plastic sheetings held up by sticks. He makes his daily round of workshops and dreams of one day perhaps owning his own craft shop to peddle wares to tourists.
And now we come to the final story of the evening. The Kenyan government has set alight 11 giant stockpiles of elephant tusks from its vast stockpile of ivory. Now the aim is the grand gesture to shock the world into putting a stop to the slaughter of elephants and to bring an end to the ivory trade. But not everyone is convinced that this is the best way to solve the problem. Here's a report from AFP reporter Celine Sleri, who was in Kenya just before the event took place.
This stockpile of illegally poached ivory contains 105 tons of tusks from more than 8,000 elephants. The whole lot will be burnt this week in Nairobi as part of Africa's biggest ever mass ivory burning. It's a symbolic move to show traffickers that there's no place for poaching and the illegal trade must stop.
It is important because Kenya is demonstrating practically that Kenya believes that the only value of ivory and the rhino horn is either on the elephant or the rhino. There is no other value, and by destroying it, we are walking the talk, as it were.
More than 30,000 elephants are killed for their tusks in Africa every year. Today, fewer than 500,000 roam the continent. Organisers hope the public burning will highlight the animals' plight and deter future buyers.
Anybody seeing this kind of fire in a third world country, if you're in China, you're asking yourself, why are they destroying what looks like money? They're telling you, maybe it is, but to us, we want to put it beyond economic use. We don't want to discuss selling this stuff.
It doesn't make sense to kill a 7-ton animal to make a cosmetic, make bangles, make a rubber stamp. It doesn't make you a special being. It is not medicine.
The economic value of one elephant is estimated to be around $1.6 million through tourism, which means that throughout its lifetime, each animal generates 75 times the value of its ivory. For Kenya, which relies heavily on wildlife tourism, protecting its elephant population is a priority. Before the tusks are destroyed, scientists are examining each and every one to gather clues to combat poaching.
Before they burn it, it's important that they know how much they have, what does it represent in terms of weight, in terms of pieces, is there any other scientific information they can know from the ivory by taking a DNA record? So even after they dispose it, they have good data that they can use for scientific purposes.
The ivory trade was banned under international law in 1989. Yet in China, 1 kilo of raw tusks sells for more than $1,000. Heads of state, international celebrities and conservationists are expected to attend the burning, drawing attention to the elephant's plight before it's too late.
Well, to discuss this issue, I have with me in the studio Shruti Shuresh, who's a wildlife campaigner for the Environmental Investigation Agency. Thank you indeed for coming on to the programme. Can we start about looking at the problem of poaching and how bad it is really in Africa, and whether in fact that's endangering the lives of the elephants? What's the situation there at the moment?
Africa is facing a serious elephant poaching crisis. From more than 1 million elephants in Africa in the 1970s, we now have a population of 400,000 elephants, so it's more than half. The primary reason for this decline is poaching for facilitating illegal trade in ivory. In Tanzania, for example, more than 60% of its elephants have been lost to poaching. In a specific national park, the Ruaha National Park alone, 60% of its elephants were lost in 1 year. So it just gives you an indication of how serious the threat of poaching is to elephants in Africa. And the similar threat is faced by elephants in Asia as well.
Now, would you agree with what the Kenyan government have done in terms of burning those stockpiles in the way they've done?
EIA supports destruction of ivory stockpiles, and we believe that the most compelling reason to do so is to get rid of the security risk. Just based on publicly available information, EIA has found that there have been at least 14 incidents of thefts from government-owned ivory stockpiles across Africa and Asia, and in Europe as well. It's a huge security risk, and we would recommend that governments world over destroy their ivory, whether they do it as a publicity event or whether they choose to do it regularly. It's up to the governments to decide, but we do welcome this as best practice to address the security risk.
Kenya have decided to do this, but other countries in Africa have decided against that. And which countries are they?
There are several countries in Africa who have destroyed their ivory stockpiles, like Gabon, Cameroon, DRC. But there are also countries that do not believe in destroying stockpiles, and for example, that's South Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe. Interestingly, Botswana is in a position where they've changed their policy on ivory stockpiles. Previously, they preferred to stockpile their ivory so that they could sell the ivory into the Far East markets. They've now announced that they do not support a trade in ivory and have committed to observe a moratorium on international and domestic trade in ivory. While they may or may not destroy their ivory stockpiles, it's interesting to note that they will not be using their stockpiles for commercial purposes.
Do you think that the message that the Kenyan government has sent is a strong enough one? And this isn't really the way to do that, in burning it publicly like that, in that way. Is that the kind of thing you think was going to work, is going to actually change the situation in terms of poaching, I think?
I think the biggest message for us as we see it is that Kenya is now putting its money where its mouth is. Historically and for several decades, Kenya has supported an international and domestic trade ban on ivory. And by destroying millions, perhaps billions worth of ivory, 105 tons of ivory really, it's signifying that it will not at this point or in the future sell its ivory for commercial purposes. And we welcome that because it emphasizes that they will not put a price tag on ivory and that they value ivory on elephants in the wild.
Now, Shruti, let's clarify this. There is in fact two trades, an illegal trade and a fully legal trade of ivory. And so what Kenya is saying is that they don't want to be involved in either of those, neither the illegal or having their stockpiles being passed on in the international market. Now, surely there's a case for having the two trades to exist, or sorry, one of the trades to exist, that is the legal trade. Surely there is no reason why, if an elephant dies, that his tusks can be removed and used in the way that you know, people choose to have, because for freedom of choice. What would you say to that? Because there is a legal route that seems to be ignored here.
There's strong evidence to suggest that a legal permitted trade in elephant ivory will not work. This is because on two previous occasions, in 1999 and in 2008, there were two big auctions of African elephant ivory where certain African countries sold ivory to Japan and China. Our experience in investigating the ivory trade in China and other parts of the world has shown that a legal trade in ivory has not stopped the illegal trade in ivory and ivory trafficking. In fact, a legal trade in ivory provides an avenue for laundering illegal ivory and therefore stimulates illegal trade.
Then surely that people will argue, isn't the job here to stamp down on the illegal trade rather than to obliterate the trade altogether? There is, if you like, a market for it. People want to have these goods, and they're made. We saw in the clip there people being, not liking the idea, but nevertheless, I mean, there are people who find that ivory is a very valuable commodity, and they like to have and make ornaments out of it. I mean, are we, if you like, not allowing the world to express itself, or indeed African countries who are making money from the legal trade, aren't we now stamping down on their mode of income?
Well, we have, as an international community, experimented with a legal trade. And the single biggest turning point in elephant conservation was when last year China, the world's largest destination market for ivory, announced that it will not support a domestic trade in ivory. This happened in September last year when President Obama and President Xi Jinping, in a very high-level bilateral meeting, announced their commitment to halt domestic trade in ivory. Now, this is a very, very big move because it suggests that China did experiment with elephant ivory. They've been flagged repeatedly for their implication in ivory trafficking and ivory smuggling, and they've realized that a legal trade in ivory has not really helped them to clamp down on the illegal trade and in ivory trafficking. And you have tons and tons of ivory being trafficked from Africa all over across the world to China, Thailand, Japan, Laos, and other parts of the world.
In terms of money, what kind of monies are we talking about for the illegal trade, and what kind of income can one make on the legal basis of it?
From the illegal trade, it's a multi-million-dollar worth trade. You have organized, serious criminal syndicates working across continents to facilitate the trade. You have tons and tons of ivory, and we're talking about container full of tusks being shipped from Africa, from places like Tanzania, across to China. So for us, the biggest red flag in this trade is that you have serious organized criminal syndicates involved in the trade, and so governments need to be treating this issue as an organized criminal offense, and that it requires cooperation amongst governments to address this issue in a holistic manner. In terms of the legal trade, there is discussion about compensating, for example, ivory factories and retailers in China who are at the moment involved in the legal trade. From the previous two auctions of ivory, where the 4 African countries participated in the sales, it's very unclear how the revenue from those auctions actually benefited conservation or how it was used. There was some lack of transparency there on how the money was actually used. But at the end of the day, I think what the international community has to come to terms with is that you did experiment with the trade. It was a failure, and we know for a fact now, absolutely compelling evidence, that the trade has an impact on elephants in Africa. And it's not a problem that one country can solve alone.
I was going to ask you that. What is being done to try and bring countries together, especially those who have differing opinions about the ivory trade? Are there discussions going on at the moment? Are there people trying to bring countries together to try and work out a uniform, if you like, program on how to sort out this problem?
There are several initiatives on addressing ivory trafficking and illegal wildlife trade issues more broadly. But specifically on the issue of whether or not to trade in ivory. Last year, in what was called the Cotonou Declaration, 25 African countries adopted commitments to support a domestic as well as an international ban on ivory. And Kenya was one of those countries, and several other countries joined that as well. There's another initiative called the Elephant Protection Initiative, and the United Kingdom is also a part of this initiative. And significantly, Botswana and Tanzania, some of the big African elephant range states, are part of this initiative. They have also committed to observe a moratorium on international trade in ivory and to put away their ivory stockpiles beyond economic use. Again, that's very significant. In September this year, there's going to be a very significant meeting of the parties of the UN Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, or CITES. In this conference, this issue is going to be very much discussed, whether or not to have a trade ban at the domestic level as well as the international level. Interestingly, the United States has also submitted a proposal for this conference so that a proposal can be adopted to observe a domestic trade ban in ivory, and EI is very much in support of that proposal, and we understand that there are several governments who support that proposal as well. So it is being discussed, and it's a very live issue and a very controversial issue.
There's a lot going on. Well, Shruti, thank you very much indeed for coming in and discussing that problem for us. Okay, and thank you also for your comments. And we will, of course, be following that issue as we go along on another occasion. Well, we've run out of time, but I'd like to thank the guests for coming into the studio and on the show, and thank you at home for watching. Don't forget, you can reach out to us by email, Africa This Week, it's at islamchannel.tv, or you can tweet us at islamchannelca on the hashtag Africa This Week IC. And coming soon, you'll be able to see our previous programs on our website, www.islamchannel.tv. Now, we'll leave you with scenes of Madagascar's first ever hot air balloon festival, which took place on Wednesday, and is part of the country's bid to promote its budding tourist industry. Have a good evening. Take care.